The Women's Liberation Movement of 1968 by Gianna Philippi. As discussed in Chapter 15, Winds of Change, Marriage in the 1960s and 1970s, the political movement against segregation in the war in Vietnam in 1960s were followed by an attack on the whole 1950s package of beliefs about women's roles, courtship, and marriage. The Women's Liberation Movement in 1968 was a defining moment in history, making a significant shift in the fight for gender equality. Fueled by the wider social and political movements of the time, women across the globe began to challenge oppressive gender norms, demand equal rights, and fight for systematic change. This presentation examines 11 key aspects of the women's liberation movement in 1968, highlighting its major events, ideologies, and achievements. The women's liberation movement of 1968 emerged in response to extreme gender inequalities prevalent in society at the time. Women faced limited opportunities in education, employment, and politics, and were often regulated to traditional roles as wives and mothers. Amongst many others, the three main factors that led to the women's liberation movement includes gender discrimination in the workplace, limited reproductive rights and health services, and societal expectations and gender roles. Women faced significant inequalities and discrimination in the workplace. They were often limited to low-paying jobs with few opportunities for advancement, while men held the majority of higher-paying and influential positions. Women were frequently subjected to gender-based pay gaps, denied equal employment opportunities, and faced widespread societal expectations that prioritized their roles as wives and mothers over professional aspirations. Furthermore, women's reproductive rights and access to reproductive health services were severely restricted, contributing to their overall oppression. Contraception was often inaccessible or illegal, limiting women's ability to control their own bodies and reproductive choices. Unsafe abortions were common, leading to significant health risk and even death. The lack of comprehensive reproductive health care perpetuated gender equality and limited women's autonomy. Finally, traditional societal expectations placed heavy burdens on women, regulating them to specific gender roles as wives, mothers, and caretakers. These roles were often rigidly enforced and limited women's opportunity for personal and professional development. Women were expected to conform to narrow beauty standards, prioritize their family's needs over their own, and were discouraged from pursuing higher education or career aspirations. The Miss America Protest. The Miss America Protest of 1986 was a prominent event that captured the spirit of the women's liberation movement. Held outside of the Atlantic City Convention Center on September 7, 1986, protesters highlighted the objectification of women, calling for an end to beauty pageants and societal standards of beauty that guided gender inequality. The protest was organized by a group of feminist activists who aimed to challenge the Miss America pageant and its associated ideals. Among the key organizers were members of a feminist group called the New York Radical Women. It included a range of creative and symbolic actions aimed at highlighting the objectification of women and challenging societal beauty standards. Protesters brought items associated with female beauty standards, such as bras, girdles, high-heeled shoes, and beauty products, and then threw them into a Freedom trash can. This act symbolizes a rejection of oppressive beauty standards and objectification. They also used satire to critique the pageant, referring to the contestants as cattle and carrying signs that highlighted the dehumanizing nature of beauty contestants. Finally, activists used a larger banner with the slogan, Women's Liberation, and No More Miss America written across it, capturing the essence of their demand for gender equality and an end to beauty pageants. The Miss America protest of 1968 had a profound impact on the women's liberation movement. It brought issues of gender inequality and the objectification of women into the public consciousness and helped them bring support for feminist causes. The protest challenged traditional beauty standards, questioned the legitimacy of beauty pageants, and sparked ongoing conversations about women's empowerment. The flood of feminist publications in 1968 played a vital role in raising awareness and furthering the movement. Miss Magazine is a groundbreaking feminist publication that played a pivotal role in advancing the feminist movement and promoting gender equality. Founded in 1971 by Gloria and Dorothy, the magazine provided a platform to discuss feminist issues, challenge stereotypes, and advocate for women's rights. It featured articles that addressed the experiences of women from diverse racial, ethnic, and socio-economic backgrounds, highlighting their similar struggles. For instance, the magazine covered issues like reproductive rights, violence against women, the workplace discrimination, acknowledging that different women face unique challenges. It also published articles on sexual harassment, domestic violence, and abortion rights at the time, when these subjects were rarely discussed openly. By bringing these issues to the forefront, Miss Magazine helped break the silence surrounding them and initiate much-needed public conversations. Women's liberation groups organized activism and fostered collective awareness. Such groups such as the National Organization for Women, Women's Liberation Movement, Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell, and Combahee River Collective all advocated for legal reforms, reproductive rights, and equal employment opportunities, uniting women across different backgrounds. To start off, the National Organization for Women aimed to address gender discrimination and advance women's rights. It focuses on issues such as equal pay, reproductive rights, and gender-based violence. It promoted legislative changes, including the passage of Title IX, which prohibits sex discrimination in education. The Women's Liberation Movement organization was the overall general structure in which varied from group to group, but they shared common principles and organizing methods. They operated on local, regional, and national levels, forming groups that focused on addressing specific women's rights issues and promoting feminist ideals within their communities. The Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell was known for its theatrical and provocative actions, which aimed to challenge and disrupt the patriarchal structures of society. The group drew inspiration from the witch trials of the past, reclaiming the figure of the witch as a symbol of women's power and resistance. Witch, WITCH, which stands for Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell. Witch members often dressed in black robes and pointed hats, evoking the stereotypical image of a witch, and they referred to their actions as quote-unquote hexes against the patriarchy. The Combahee River Collective was a prominent black feminist organization that emerged in the 1970s as part of the women's liberation movement. Named after the Combahee River in South Carolina, where Harriet Tubman led a significant military operation during the American Civil War, the collective played a crucial role in shaping the multicultural feminist movement. They believed that the liberation of black women was inseparable from the liberation of all oppressed groups, and that the inclusive feminist movement should actively confront multiple systems of oppression. The Red Stockings Manifesto. The publication of the Red Stockings Manifesto in 1968 by the Red Stockings, a radical feminist group, called for the liberation of women from patriarchal oppression. It demanded reproductive rights, an end to gender-based discrimination, and equal opportunities for women in all spheres of life, including marriage. One of the central themes of the manifesto was the concept of male supremacy. It argued that men, as a group, held power over women, and this power dynamic ran through all aspects of society. It highlighted how women's labor was undervalued, their voices silenced, and their bodies objectified. It condemned the pervasive nature of male domination and called for an ending of all of it. Consciousness-raising groups gained popularity during this period. These groups operated on the belief that personal experience held political significance. They created a supportive and non-judgmental environment where women could openly discuss and explore their individual struggles, whether related to gender discrimination, reproductive rights, domestic labor, or other issues. Similar to what we know today as group therapy, these discussions often revealed shared experience and patterns, leading to a collective understanding of the broader social, economic, and cultural forces that shaped women's lives. The women's liberation movement of 1968 made significant accomplishments in legal battles for gender equality. The movement has aimed to address the issue of gender-based wage disparities. Because of this, many countries have introduced legislation to promote equal pay for equal work, prohibiting gender-based wage discrimination. Examples include the United States Equal Pay Act of 1963 and the United Kingdom's Equal Pay Act of 1970. Similar anti-discrimination laws exist in other countries to address gender bias in employment, housing, education, and public accommodations. The women's liberation movement has fought for reproductive rights, including access to safe and legal abortion, contraception, and reproductive health care. Prominent cases like Roe v. Wade in the United States in 1973 established the constitutional right to abortion. Advocacy by the women's liberation movement has led to improvements in maternity leave policies, recognizing the need for paid time off for new mothers. Many countries have implemented laws requiring paid maternity leave and provisions for child care services to support working women. Furthermore, feminist activists have campaigned for stronger laws and improved support systems for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Legislation has been enacted in many jurisdictions to criminalize domestic violence, establish protection orders, and establish specialized services for victims. The movement has fought for equal access to education for women and girls. Laws have been enacted to prohibit gender discrimination in educational institutions and promote educational opportunities for women. Finally, those involved in the movement have pushed for increased representation of women in politics and leadership roles. They lobbied for legislation promoting organized protests such as the Women's Strike for Equality on August 26, 1970, which marked the 50th anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States. Influence on other movements. The women's liberation movement of 1968 had a profound impact on other social justice movements. Women's liberation activists recognized the intersections of gender, race, and class, leading to collaborations with civil rights and anti-war movements and sparking broader conversations on intersectional feminism. The movement's fight against gender and sexual discrimination helped pave the way for LGBTQ+ activism. Many women who were part of the movement were also active in advocating for LGBTQ rights and challenging heteronormative and patriarchal systems. Civil rights movement. Additionally, the movement intersected with the broader civil rights movement. Women of color were at the forefront of both movements, highlighting the specific experiences of discrimination faced by women of color and addressing issues of racial and gender inequality simultaneously. This collaboration created solidarity and influenced the trajectory of the civil rights movement. Finally, the women's liberation movement challenged traditional beauty standards and the objectification of women's bodies. This critique of social norms regarding women's appearance and the emphasis on body positivity has since influenced the body positivity movement and efforts to challenge narrow beauty standards, as we now see reflected upon social media such as Instagram or TikTok. In conclusion, the women's liberation movement of 1968 left a lasting legacy, inspiring ongoing waves of feminism and shaping continuous conversations on gender equality. Its influence can be seen in ongoing efforts to go against gender-based discrimination and achieve full gender equality in various spheres of life. Through protest, consciousness-raising groups, legal victories, and ideology shifts, women challenged societal norms, demanded equal rights, and sparked lasting change. The movement's impact extended beyond 1968, shaping the feminist landscape and inspiring future generations of activists. While progress towards gender equality is ongoing, the women's liberation movement of 1968 stands as a milestone in the pursuit of a more equitable and just society for women.